Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Way T Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Show. And boy, you really want to listen to this one because we are interviewing the SaunaSpace founder, Brian Richards. And we're going to talk about near-infrared sauna therapy and some of the science-backed benefit it has for wound healing, tissue repair, immunity, and detoxification, and some recent studies about infectious disease. Getting into Brian's story, you know, he's always been into optimal health, and he created SaunaSpace, an incandescent sauna product line. We'll talk about that in a minute, in order to help others discover the pathway to natural healing, which now includes the world's first Faraday cage sauna. Now, exactly. So, of course, at the beginning of this journey, it was basically a do-it-yourself product where he did everything from designing his logo to building his website. And now he has a 35-person team operating an 18,000 square foot facility. And I've got to say for everyone, I've been using the SaunaSpace sauna during the entire COVID. And we got one here at the Bio Home. I love it. It's great. It's got a Faraday cage, which you kind of step in there, and I'm in the electromagnetic super zone here in Venice Beach, California.
Oh yes, you have the latest version of the Faraday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
correct,
we go
with
in
the
there
turmeric,
and you can feel the difference when you're inside. You're like, okay, there's something going on here, and it's wild. And I go down there. I love it. It's really neat. And the way the light sets up and how you can turn the lights, like more light panels. It's a very unique sauna. So, hey, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks for having me. So pleased to be here.
You know, I think sauna and light therapy, and for those who don't know the awesome formula, the air, water, exercise, sunlight, optimizers, mental beliefs, education, testing, and coaching, which is the foundation of our philosophy at Bioptimizers of how to achieve what we call biologically optimized health. The solar aspect and the sun aspect and the unintended consequences of technological innovation, where now people are spending more time indoors instead of outdoors. This is a huge thing. And one of the reasons that we got Brian's SaunaSpace device, because it addresses a lot of the issues of technological innovation. In other words, we're not outside as much, even though I'm in California. I'm here in front of my computer. Now I got this beautiful light therapy. I got EMF blocking. It's just awesome. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Wade.
So, cool. Okay, so how does a guy go from, like, how did you get into the SaunaSpace originally? Like, what attracted you to saying, hey, you know what, I need to get into sauna? Like, what was the journey? Like, I want to know the whole story.
Yeah, it started out with my own health problems, which I think a lot of people can identify with, and the frustrations we have with, frankly, a lot of the allopathic solutions offered out there, all the regular medical offerings, I was really dissatisfied with. So I think I'm not unique in that regard. I went out and started searching for my own solution, started out with search engines and my own research. Anyway, I was dealing with adrenal fatigue, weird acne, only around my kidneys in the back. So you couldn't see it on my face or my limbs. And then I had, like I said, what I concluded, my self-diagnosis was adrenal fatigue. I was lethargic. I had brain fog. I had low energy. I was also irascible, like bitchy, you know, kind of sometimes, right. You know, just irritable, but also like irascible. Like I could, you know, you could get me lit up pretty quickly, get me, you know, worked up quickly, even though I'm generally speaking, I've always that I'm a healthy guy, more or less. But this stuff all started to really come to a head at the end of my college career. And I'm still young, but and then I was extremely young, and it didn't make sense to me. So through my searching, because when I got the slap in the face for me was when a dermatologist recommended Accutane, which now has been taken off the market because it's associated with liver cancer, and it's quite a thing. And that shocked my system. I said, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm doing something. There has to be something else that makes sense, something that addresses the core, the root problem. So I'm thankful enough to have a mother who's actually a general practitioner physician who got into natural care about 25 years ago up in Montana, where I grew up. And interesting, because she was doing stuff that nobody else was doing a long time ago. And so she kind of, I would say, would be the sort of the inspiration, the philosophical inspiration for me. And I was skeptical of the conventional approaches. So I got online. I kept coming back through my research to sauna and to detoxification and this concept of cleansing the body to restore optimal functioning. So at the end of that, I discovered through a modern practitioner, Dr. Wilson's book on sauna therapy and healing, the original incandescent sauna concept. It's called the electric incandescent light bath. And it's invented by Dr. Kellogg in 1891, about 3 years after incandescent light bulbs were invented. This dude comes out and he says, we're going to use these lights to make a sauna, and something about it, it's better, and it's going to be better. And so he made this. He also made an arc light bath as well. But he basically ran 50,000 invalid patients, so patients with chronic disease, from 1904 to 1907 through his incandescent sauna in Battle Creek, Michigan. And he wrote a whole book on it called Light Therapeutics. And you can read this online. It's fascinating. And they look like these big Victorian cabinets. They're gorgeous. And so it shocked me. I saw that and I was like, whoa, there's over 120 years of safe use of this technology. And yet you can't find it anywhere. Where do you buy an incandescent sauna? So I built my own and had this just wonderful healing experience. My insomnia, which is something I didn't mention before, that was really frustrating me. I was sleeping amazingly after like 2 sauna sessions. And we know now there's a big HRV swing. There's a big parasympathetic swing with sauna afterward, which I didn't understand any of that stuff back then. But I was sleeping well immediately. So then I doubled down and began to use it really with discipline for about 6 months, 4 or 5 days a week. And that basically coupled with just shifting to more of a paleo diet, getting rid of sugar and flour. And it transformed my health and my life. And I was like 6 months later. It was only 6 months later that I realized that I actually had brain fog prior.
Right.
And that
because that was just the baseline, right? And then all
that was my baseline. Yeah. And
yeah.
I've always been, successful in academics and things. So, but I was humbled by how much more clear-minded I was, and the clarity of mind, but also the ability to be more decisive. And so all of a sudden, even with my mother, I'm more patient. I'm less irascible. I'm a better listener. I have a more positive mood. I'm not bitchy anymore. Sometimes I still am, but that's a part of being a boss and running a business. But with all that aside, it was a really glorious experience. I couldn't believe you couldn't buy a product like this in the market. At that time, I was in rental real estate, fixing up things, and I love to tinker. I'm a builder. I'm kind of an industrial designer of sorts, but I was doing it in houses for tenants who didn't care. And I didn't have the emotional and spiritual constitution for that sort of line of work. I just wanted people to be happy. And it wasn't for me. So this thing came up on the side, and all of a sudden I was making saunas for people. I started out making a couple every year for 2 years. And I probably made 5 or 10 a year for 2 years, and people loved it. And they were calling me up and saying, "You've transformed my life. It's amazing." I never got that type of a response from a tenant. And so I doubled down. I was like, hell yeah, I'm all in. I'm dropping my tools. And I started SaunaSpace with $200, basically $200 in my pocket, got a small business export loan 6 or 7 months later, because I had actually exported a couple saunas to England, which is cool. And then it slowly evolved over time. Now I have this huge place. I actually have 38 employees now.
Wow, amazing.
And this 18,000 square feet, you can kind of see a little bit behind me. There's the textile on the front. It's actually small. It's unbelievable to me. We don't have enough inventory space. So we're growing, and we've overcome a lot of challenges. Essentially, there was no commercialized incandescent sauna product. So I've been obsessively product developing one thing for 7 years now. And I've figured out a few things. I got a few things right now. Kind of what you have at your house or at the bio center was what I envisioned back then. not any of the EMF stuff, but just the look and the feel. But now we have our own custom made light bulb that's got a higher near infrared radiance. We have our custom made electromagnetic mitigating fabrics and some other really cool stuff that is just totally unique to what we're doing. And people like it. People like it.
It's really remarkable. And almost everybody I know in the high performance health or holistic health or biohacking or biological optimization, kind of on that bleeding cutting edge, virtually everybody uses saunas. We've all kind of discovered that. Now, I want to clarify for people so that they can understand what makes SaunaSpace over the different offerings or whatever. So maybe you could walk people through the different types of saunas that are out there and what makes yours unique, since you probably know the industry more than most people. Would you indulge us?
Yeah, I can break it down, and we don't have to get into the weeds of it. It's
just a general overview so people can understand.
A sauna is a type of hyperthermia. You can do it in a bathtub and other ways to heat the body up. If you increase core temperature 3 degrees and thereby overall cell temperature across the body 3 degrees, you have all these amazing restorative healing responses related to heat shock proteins and other things that essentially in the literature, we're seeing in the studies, you live longer, you have improved cognitive functioning. You have so many amazing things that happen with sauna. And I'm sure we'll talk about that for a while. But then the question is like, well, how do I want to heat my body up?
Right.
And that's where we're different. So with a hot tub, you have exposures to chemicals in the water. I think it's a more stressful way to heat the body up. Sauna is interesting because it doesn't use water. So the classic or the classic Finnish saunas do, but you're not soaking in water. But classic Finnish saunas, wet saunas, steam saunas, and actually far infrared saunas as well, heat the body up essentially by heating the air up. And so that's why those saunas have to be hot. And even far infrared saunas emit far infrared light, which is 100% absorbed by water. And our bodies are made with a majority water, about 70% water. So if you actually look at the studies, the deepest penetrating light in terms of human biological tissue is near infrared light. And this is where people get really confused. Far infrared light is great for heating up the air. And you can buy those far infrared emitters for patios, and they're amazing because when you're chilling outside on the patio and it's cold outside, you want the air around you to be warm.
Right.
But you don't want to be necessarily heating up your internal issues and sweating per se. Whereas in the sauna, we don't care about the air temperature. All we care about is the core body temperature.
Right.
So the difference is SaunaSpace, number one, in terms of sauna, uses a big, huge 250 watt custom made incandescent bulb. And 40% of the light emission from this is near infrared, which is the deepest penetrating light that's available out there. In terms of biological tissue, this light penetrates on average many inches into the body. So with the SaunaSpace sauna, we don't use the air to heat us up. The air is really there just to stop us from cooling down too much. So all that to say that when you use a SaunaSpace sauna, you don't really need to preheat. You're sweating in 10 minutes. Your core temperatures has risen 3 degrees in 15 or 20 minutes, and you're pretty much good. Any session you do to achieve the same core temperature elevation in a far infrared sauna or in a wet sauna will take you at least 35 minutes, guaranteed. And
wow.
So number one, we just heat you up faster, which is cool where we don't have time. So that's the number one differentiator in the sauna. It's also, though, a lower ambient air temperature since we don't need the air to be really hot to heat us up. So folks with autoimmune issues, with chronic issues where they're really weak and fatigue and really sensitive to heat, they really love our sauna because the air temperature inside is only about 110, 115, maybe 120. It's not like a far infrared sauna at 160 degrees or even a Finnish sauna at 180 or even 200 degrees. Those are very stressful environments for folks, with chronic disease, but those are the people who need sauna most.
That's the ironic part, right? A lot of people don't recognize is like, if I take someone like my mom, who's very sensitive to heat per se and doesn't sweat very well. She can't go into a regular sauna because it gets too hot and she starts to panic or whatever. But in a sauna like this, she can go in there and start to systematically increase her dosage to get the sweating up and to get the toxins out of the system or whatever. And I think you illustrate something very, very well, because a lot of people are looking at just absolute temperature versus relative temperature inside the body. And I think that's the key. That's where the confusion is. They think, well, it's kind of like more is better. Like, it's like, if I take more of a supplement, it's not better unless I absorb it. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with heat. What you're suggesting is, because of the deeper penetration of the near infrared and not requiring the vast temperature increase, there you get a lot of the metabolic, or all of the metabolic benefits to the body without the corollary challenges of massive heat. Like, if you're trying to get up to 160 degrees in a barrel sauna, you got to get a barrel sauna. You probably got to put it outdoors. You can't put it in your house. You need various venting things, all these sort of things. Where with the SaunaSpace, like the one we have, we just threw it in the room, plugged it in, and away you go. It's
and you don't
nothing else required.
Yeah, that's the fundamental confusion in the market that we're trying to clear up. And I think we're doing good so far in clearing that up. The goal is not to heat up the room. It's to heat your body up. And so you can do it in a lot of ways. We're just a lot more efficient. However, there's some other things going on with SaunaSpace. There's this concept of light therapy, photobiomodulation, red light therapy, mitochondrial stimulation, light controlling biology. And it's all about the mitochondrial stimulation. Those of you, I'm sure, in your community are somewhat aware of PBM. It's really widespread. Most of the mitochondrial stimulation you see out there are LED-based products, but the original product is not a product; it's the sun. And in fact, people think the benefit from sunlight is really primarily in the vitamin D production due to the ultraviolet, certain ultraviolet wavelengths. When in fact, that's a small fraction of the sun. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like 41% of sunlight is near infrared and 15 or 20 more is red. Adding those two together, the majority of sunlight is mitochondrial stimulating wavelengths, which is really interesting. So for me, I think that it makes a strong argument that the majority of the benefit is there and not in the ultraviolet light stimulus. The ultraviolet light stimulus is important. And these are all dose dependent things. And so they're all important, but we're supposed to get a bigger dose of red near infrared than we are of ultraviolet and blue. And even going further, we'll talk about it later, but you never got in nature blue light without near infrared red. Only man-made artificial light introduces this bizarre concept that really messes with our biology. So in SaunaSpace, we're doing light therapy. And so for someone like your mom or someone like that, it feels good. There's beneficial neuropsychiatric effects that basically make you feel happy, reduce stress levels. They literally calm down your nervous system while you're in the sauna. And actually, while you're in the sauna, it's a sympathetic activity. You're increasing heart rate. You're doing some things like that. But the light therapy, in addition to having its own benefits, inflammation reduction, gene repair, anti-aging effects, growth, cell growth effects. It's also it's kind of like modulating the sauna therapy. It's giving the cells more energy as well. And detox and cell repair is intense. We need energy. We got a lot to do in there. And so to directly energize your cells through near-infrared light therapy, it really just changes the experience of our sauna. When you do a SaunaSpace sauna, I feel like, or any incandescent sauna, but particularly us, I think, it's fun. It's a joyful experience. And you find it, I know so many people, they talk about it, me included, like you sit in a wet sauna and you're like, it's a time, can I get out now? Whereas in a SaunaSpace sauna, it's more groovy. It's more just zen. And that the biggest part of that, I think, is the light therapy.
It's really pronounced and noticeable. And I everywhere I go, I like to experiment with saunas and the different theories and stuff like that. But one of the things that I did know when I started using the SaunaSpace is like, I felt there was a significant something. There's something going on. And I want to talk a little bit because this is an area that I'm very sensitive to. And I think it's important for people to understand it. Years ago, I read a book by Dr. Rollier, who would take people to different heights in the mountains in Switzerland to expose them to different frequency lengths of light. And he was healing tuberculosis at the turn of the century and all these type of wild things, right? And I was fascinated with this light spectrum. And you bring up something that I think is very critical. I can walk into certain rooms and the lighting, I'm just like, I got to get out of here. Like, I can feel that the lighting is not, something's wrong with the lighting. The lighting is screwing up. It's not resonating with my body. And you bring up this particular incident with, and one of my big pet peeves is these low energy bulbs that everybody's using. They seem to be the biggest violators. I don't like the feel of them. Can you explain what you just touched on with the variance in light between like the blue light or like and how that happens naturally in nature and how we've kind of moved away from that with our indoor lighting?
Yeah, so nature's light, the light of nature is analog. It's incandescent. So it's basically what is also referred to as full spectrum light. So from the sun, we get all of the wavelengths, all of them actually, but in a very predictable curve. And actually physics predicts this. It's called black body radiation and stuff. So physics predicts how incandescence. So when you heat a material hot enough in nature, it begins to emit light naturally. And the hotter it is, the temperature of the emitter determines the peak point of the spectrum. And so you can like integrate Planck's law and do all this fancy physics, and you can predict the exact spectral emission of, say, the sun. And then you can measure the sun and measure all the wavelengths, and the empirical observation like perfectly matches the predicted spectrum. So the concept is, it's a fundamental aspect of our universe, incandescence. It's the ultimate, nutrient. Obviously, the light, there would be no life on Earth without the sun. And so incandescent light is really infrared dominant. There's not much blue. And in terms of infrared, there's like the A team, it's near infrared. And there's the B team, it's mid infrared. And then far infrared is there, and it does heat you. But in terms of the sunlight that reaches the Earth, it's only about 2%. So we don't have much of an evolutionary experience with that. But like I said before, we're just glowing and just sucking in this near infrared red light every day, along with our blue and our red. And so.
And how much near infrared light would we be getting? Do you estimate?
I have a breakdown on the website, I think, but it's about 41% near infrared and about 15 or 20% red. So those two of those are, take you over 50%. Blue light is less, and ultraviolet light is a lot less. So what we did is we tried to design a bulb that would try to match that as close as possible.
Very cool.
We did that because we want our technology to mimic nature. I mean, that's what we're doing in biohacking. We're trying to trick the body to think it's back out there and it's eating the food of old, and we're consuming all these mushrooms, all these amazing things like that you guys promote that I love, and I'm so for. The problem is modern lighting doesn't exhibit any of these characteristics. Modern lighting doesn't have a big, broad curve with a long tail and infrared exhibiting all these wavelengths with a big emphasis on near infrared and red light. Rather, like LEDs, for example, are basically a huge spike of blue, and then they add in a fluorescing compound to make it look yellow. So to the eye, it looks like a tungsten, it looks like a regular light bulb. It has a little bit of that yellow. But in fact, the spectrum, if you measure it, is almost entirely blue. And so that's also referred to in the industry as high energy visible light. So we know that blue light has the same effect on the body as ultraviolet light in a non-ionizing fashion. So it results in the same free radical and oxidative stress pathways that cause genetic damage and DNA damage. It's just slower and it's lesser. And so when you walk into a room, or in a hospital. You go to the hospital, it's just all that light. You're like, oh my God, I don't even know why, but I don't like it. It's because it's all blue light. And if you look at studies where they shine like blue light on worms, they're like try to crawl to the ends of the earth to escape the blue light. Whereas the near infrared red light, because of its healing properties, really resonates with us. So in the modern indoor environments, we have only blue only light. I mean, I have the studio lights above me so you can see me. We need light to see. It turns out that most, like I said, incandescent bulbs, there's this big chunk of healing in the near infrared and mid infrared, or particularly in the near infrared. That's light that you don't see. That's invisible. So it has no purpose in task lighting or for lighting spaces. So with the development of new lighting technology, they cut out the infrared and all that wasteful emission, right? But unfortunately, with very deleterious effects to our health, because that component, that wasteful energy component, actually had a really important role. It keeps us happy and healthy, especially indoors. So we cut that out, and it's been very much to our detriment. So much that the French OSHA, it's called ANSIS, the French like occupational hazard government body. Again, that's called ANSIS. They issued a pretty broad proclamation about 5 years ago saying, do not use general LED lighting in the home or in the workspace. It should only be used in industrial applications for lighting purposes, because it's so damaging to our bodies, particularly our eyes. But also, we know that all the damaging aspects of getting too much blue light. If you're sitting under a lot of blue light when you're eating, you'll eat more because it's your body interprets it as a environmental stress. So people that eat a lot under blue light get fatter.
Wow.
That's one thing, but there's a lot of other aspects where all this blue only light that we never got on its own, because in nature we got 15 or 20% blue, but we got this big fat overwhelming dose of red near infrared to galvanize us, to provide an antidote against all this high energy damaging light. And it's all gone. In the fluorescent and modern LED light, it's all blue. And then it gets even worse because it also flickers. LED lighting flickers according to alternating current. So we have 60 hertz frequency in the United States. So the LED light turns on and off twice a second. And this is too fast for your conscious eye to kind of to observe. But if you take your phone and shoot some video of a LED light and then slow it down, you can see it. You can see it flickering.
Do the slow-mo. You do the slow-mo.
You do the slow-mo, it's there. And so the reality is your body's blue light receptors see that, interpret that as a stress signal. So flickering light, if you imagine putting a strobe light in front of an autistic patient, how foolish would that be? It's the same, it's the same analogy, just to a lesser effect. It's all the problem with this, and the problem with EMF stress and other modern stresses, is that they're ubiquitous and prolonged and 24 hours a day. The ancestral human only ever had hormetic stresses, temporary stresses, and that's what's the good stuff. And that's why everybody in biohacking is doing sauna, because it's an hormetic stress therapy that's amazing for us. But our bodies are not designed to get stress all the time. It wears us down. And the blue lights, who doesn't work under blue light, myself included?
Yeah, everybody.
So it's a real problem now that's hard to put your finger on, but the sheer amount of exposure we get now is really damaging to our health. And it's only more and more so with COVID, with last year, with more working at home than ever.
Right.
Whoa.
Well, let's talk about that too, because now we're into kind of the frequency realm on the light stuff. And just so people know, if you want to check out learning about how mitochondrial function goes and the energy metabolism, and if you get down to it, I mean, everything's electron covalent transfer at the so we're really just moving electrons from one place to another. So it makes sense if you have a light that is penetrating deep inside the tissue to actually stimulate electrons into the mitochondria, it serves as boosting the battery directly, as opposed to being reliant on biochemical sources and the chemical reaction chain that we call digestion, absorption, and utilization, with its correlative effects. And one of the things that I've noticed is that for me, fasting which I'm a regular faster, but if I'm in the desert and I'm fasting, it's easier to achieve fasting in the desert where there's lots of sunlight and I'm wandering around in the sun than it is if I'm in Canada at my parents' house in the winter where it's cold and dark and gray. It's a big difference. And I've always felt that it was the light spectrum. And of course, yogic practices for thousands of years talk about the advantages of exposing yourself, your eyes, your body for healing at different points in the day for different effects. But let's get into another issue that you address, which is EMFs, right? Electromagnetic frequencies. And what's very unique about SaunaSpace is that you've created basically a Faraday cage that you go into. And you know, my business partner, Matt, has a Faraday cage around his bed because he's like a sleep freak.
Yeah, of course.
And when I heard about your product and it was in a Faraday cage, I'm like, oh God, I gotta meet this guy and connect because this is so cool. How did you come to the conclusion of putting the SaunaSpace in a EMF blocking kind of tent, so to speak? And what led to that decision and why did you go ahead and do that? So if you can share with people your kind of thought process.
Absolutely. Before I do that, I wanted to comment on your what you're talking about in the desert about light. And Wade, we humans are much more, and I'm going to get a little metaphysical here, but we're much more quantum mechanical and bioelectric than we are biochemical.
I believe that to be true.
There's some interesting, the more we study, the more we have advanced observational technology where we can see things and observe things in such a minute scale. We see that fundamentally every system of the body is electromagnetic in nature. The blood is flowing down the arteries is a voltage gradient. It's not a mechanical pump that's pushing it. It's a voltage gradient. The blood-brain barrier keeps stuff out with a voltage gate. The most fundamental signaling system in the body, one of the most primordial, is the calcium signaling system. And those are voltage-gated calcium ion channels, which are triggered, which are controlled by voltage and are unfortunately disrupted by man-made electromagnetism. And so when we understand that, we understand how important it is to, maybe understand at a high level some of this EMF stuff, but just understand the importance of it, that it's just as relevant as the food you eat, and perhaps more in some ways. So the mitochondrial stimulation, when you shine light on the cells, it actually satisfies your caloric requirement in part for the day. You're eating light. We're light eaters. So when you're in the desert, you're literally eating light and you don't get as hungry. It's crazy, but it's real. And it's doing so in this the concept is just astonishing. I think it's really hard to wrap your mind around. This photon of light from the sun is going into, and it's hitting the cytochrome C protein in the mitochondria, which has a electronic configuration that can absorb that photons and not other wavelengths. And it kicks off a nitric oxide and increases ATP production, and then results in all the cascade of mitochondrial functions. And so we're eating light. We're eating this particular frequency of light. And so we need this, and we benefit from it. But it's like, well, if that's EMF and cell phone towers and cell phone signals EMFs, well, what gives, Wade? Well, the problem is the stuff that's man-made, that's non-native, is bad because it's not something we evolved under, one, and two, it's 24 hours a day. It's 24 hours a day. Where can you go where you don't get a cell phone signal, even when you go camping now? And particularly when you're in a home, you have all the wired voltage as well from the wiring, the electricity in the house. So I was learning more and more about the body and kind of the bioelectrical basis of things, and it got me really intrigued. And I already understood from the beginning that inherently incandescent technology is a little bit lower voltage than some of the other sauna technologies out there, but particularly the differences between us, this and like a wet sauna. It uses a 30 amp heater. And so you have a lot more voltage. But really, all of the products are problematic because all electrical products are problematic. Right. Because all things that conduct electricity leak voltage. I'm talking about man-made things.
Correct.
So it's not enough to just use, something technology that's a little better. We need to actually protect ourselves from the voltage because that's an undesirable side effect of technology. We want the benefit from the light. We want the hormetic stress from the light and the heat, but we don't want this sidecar. We don't want this thing. And unfortunately, it's there because it's a man-made thing. But we have another technology, electromagnetic mitigation and shielding technologies, to address that and deliver all the awesome benefits of the product and the technology without these problematic EMFs. So I didn't know how in the heck to do that until I met this really amazing dude named Brian Hoyer of Shielded Healing. And if you haven't heard of him yet, you will. I think he's in, both of us are actually in Dr. Mercola's new book, EMF'd. So awesome. Giving myself a little plug there, but that's pretty cool. We're not, I'm a small company. It's not like some kind of big operation here. But anyway, I met this guy at a conference and we started talking about voltage and grounding and stuff. And ended up having a bit of a collaboration. He helped me. He really helped me understand the concept, but also some practical ways of mitigating it. He runs a company called Shielded Healing that basically goes into homes and assesses the electromagnetic situation and provides recommendations to permanent homes. So there's different shielding paints you can use and different materials to basically build a Faraday cage of your entire bedroom. Or there's so many awesome solutions for that. So I started collaborating a little bit with Brian Hoyer and started to try to figure out how to shield the voltage first in the light panels.
Right.
And that was actually a little bit more straightforward than the sauna, of course. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But basically, we are encasing all the wiring in metal. And we're using shielded power cords, which basically have extra metal liners that are draining leaky voltage. And people think, well, what do you mean leaky voltage? I don't ever get shocked from a power cord. Well, we're talking about 15 or 20 microamps. So they're not things that you can necessarily see, but I think it's the American Cancer Society or whatever, they more than 50 microamps is considered carcinogenic. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of situations in your home right now where you intermittently experience like 200 microamps. So it's enough that it's juicing you and it has a deleterious effect slowly over time, just slowly breaking you down and killing you over time.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
So I was like, okay, let's lock down this EMF. Let's take care of it. So we addressed electromagnetic, voltage, but also magnetic field issues. Most of the sauna products out there that you see, some of these other sauna companies, they're a little bit sneaky, a little bit tricksome because they only talk about magnetic field, which is measured in Gauss or milligauss. Use a Gauss meter, measure that. There's also and potentially more of a nervous stressor is voltage stress, so electric field stress. And what's in the air the most ubiquitous EMF stress we have in our society, in our world, is absolutely cell phone technology. Yeah. And those are electric fields. So really the worry, frankly, about EMFs is more about voltage, is about electric fields than magnetic fields. Magnetic field sources that are significant include like your power breaker, you know, where all your circuits are in your house, those big green transformer things outside of buildings, big power lines. So we're talking big industrial sources. That's where you get into magnetic field. And you can kind of get screwed sometimes when you buy an apartment and you don't know and you don't see that. Yeah. But generally speaking, the ubiquitous stuff that's all around is all, no matter where we go, is in the home, low frequency voltage from wire electricity, and then everywhere, cell phone technology, which is currently about 1800 megahertz to about 2 or 3 gigahertz frequencies. Wow. Those things are really tricky. The higher frequencies are really small. You know, higher frequencies are small, so they actually penetrate really small holes. So if you're going to block them out, you have to seal it up and make a real Faraday cage. So a Faraday cage, for those of you out there who don't know, is basically a 6-sided volume of some kind that electric fields don't go in or out. They call them Gaussian spheres. And you can build these, and they have these in testing facilities where you test the hardening of electronics in like a big John Deere tractor. You don't want a cell phone signal to take over a big robot Caterpillar and start driving it down the street. So it already exists in laboratories, but I was trying to create it for the sauna, and I was trying to create it for the sauna because we know there's a lot of problems with electromagnetic stress. So I'll get to those in a second. But what we did with the sauna was basically we said, well, I want to make a metal box, but I want to make it machine washable. I want it to be natural and hypoallergenic, no chemicals, and hopefully even organic. And that took about 4 generations in 2 years and a lot of heartache. But we now offer a 35% silver, 65% organic cotton, washable material that we have third-party lab tested between 40 kilohertz and 40 gigahertz. And it has amazing shielding effectiveness right where we want it, right in the cell phone range, which is the worst of the worst. That'll be up next month on the new website, but it's cool. It really works. And so what we did is we said, okay, we're going to use this metallic liner, and we ground it. And what it does is it takes like all the electric fields in the air that are flying in and trying to go into the sauna. They hit the metal, and then they drain out through the power cords ground because it's grounded. So it's a really interesting concept. What does that do? Well, what that does is it gives you the first probably time in your life that you've actually been completely free from nervous stress. And it's the blue light because the curtain's closed. It's dark in there. There's no window, right? There's no glass door. And then you get inside that Faraday space. And for the first time ever, your voltage gated calcium ion channels are not opening constantly.
And you feel it.
Magnetic signal.
If like I'm sensitive to a lot of things. And the second you go inside that tent, you feel a difference. And I'm very sensitive to a variety of things, and I'm kind of tuned myself. And I go inside that and I go, okay. You know what it reminded me the first time is like when I was a little kid, and you would kind of put the blanket over a bunch of chairs and the table, and you would play underneath, and it was kind of like this secret space that nobody could get to. That was before cell phones, by the way, folks.
Yeah.
The first time I went in there, I triggered to that time when in my childhood. And I was like, well, that's really neat. So it's a beautiful experience. I want to switch gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about some of the research, I think, which is relevant right now, because these are very stressful times with, COVID and infectious disease and things like that. But, and people are stressed out with the economic fallout of, the mitigations and things like that. You were talking just before here, and there's some very positive effects using this technology on infectious diseases and potentially even in COVID cases.
Yeah, very interesting last year. Obviously, in the forefront of everybody's mind was and is the current public health crisis of COVID-19, not just the actual disease and the virus itself, but the societal effects of quarantines and lockdowns and of kids not being able to go to school and so forth. And what we saw is an explosion in, adverse neuropsychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety, suicide,
Huge.
domestic violence.
It's massive.
And that was not just something I read in the news. I felt that viscerally here in the community, here locally, and also in the natural wellness community, across the nation, across the world. Everybody's, suffering from this and dealing with this. So there's a couple really interesting things that were that speak to this in regards to near-infrared light therapy and sauna. So I'll start with the first one. The first one was a photobiomodulation study where they gave they had this advanced COVID patient was in the hospital. They were about to put him on a ventilator. His pneumonia index was really high. Tissue oxygen saturation, terribly low. This guy is like in a really bad way, experiencing all of the symptoms of COVID-19. And they did a 20-minute near-infrared light treatment on the lungs a day for 4 days. So 4 20-minute red light, near-infrared light therapy treatments on the lungs. And after the 4th session, his pulmonary index and his tissue oxygenation improved so much, and he was so much relieved that he walked out of the hospital. Now, this is just a case study,
right?
But like this guy was, about
it's
to
an
die.
anecdotal case of somebody going on here. But here's the bottom line: is this would be indicative that, hey, maybe we need to research this a little bit more.
Well, and what's going on is that the near-infrared light and mitochondrial stimulation is understood to increase tissue oxygenation, and it also immediately reduces inflammation. And so when you do that in the lungs, you allow the lungs to breathe better, because that's kind of what's going on apparently with COVID is the coronavirus can occupy the heme spot in your blood. So your red blood cells can't carry oxygen, and your body's the only thing it can do is like make more red blood cells. And it's kind of this battle to the finish, who's going to win. But what a cool thing that you have a really non-invasive therapy here, totally non-invasive, no side effects, something that everybody can do at home, has all these other amazing benefits, and absolutely has clearly has there's a support for an argument that it has a direct benefit to treating COVID itself, not just being a preventative measure. And so we also have that in our community. We have a number of anecdotal reports because a lot of people got COVID last year.
Right.
And, we have a number of our customers who already had our product, and they ended up contracting COVID and got through it really successfully and really easily, using sauna, using light therapy. This one guy, Brett, said, and he only had the photon at that point, and he said, yeah, I got COVID and I felt like I was drowning. Like I felt like I just couldn't breathe well. And I was, and what he did was he did a just targeted therapy treatment with the photon every day and really breezed through it. I have several studies of that. Of course, those are all anecdotal and we're engaging in conjecture here. But the vast science of 7,000 studies of near-infrared light therapy and photobiomodulation in general support all of this, that it's extremely beneficial for improving, it's already been used in so many studies and in so many real life cases for pulmonary disorders, for chronic upper respiratory tract infections and things like that, just the light therapy. And then bring in the sauna too, bring in the heat therapy, the cleansing aspect that it has to that. And the heat shock protein is not just all about detoxing you. It's all about also repairing your proteins and your enzymes. So your heat shock proteins, they go around and fix and optimize protein functioning, which is how sauna therapy can positively, how sauna therapy can improve your insulin functioning and increase insulin signaling, because the heat shock protein goes out of the cell and fixes the insulin receptor protein. And then insulin binds better and you reduce insulin resistance, which is a huge thing. Like that's a huge problem in society that's going on. So there's all these amazing things it does to help heal you, the sauna therapy and the light therapy. But to speak directly to what you also asked, all this suffering that we have going on, we also see really interesting benefits and positive neuropsychiatric effects of light therapy and of sauna. It makes you happy. There's actually a newer study where we're seeing near-infrared light shining on the brain cells, promoting production of monoamine neurotransmitters,
That's right.
dopamine and serotonin. And so that's like, that stuff makes you feel good, makes you feel happy. So I think there's a strong argument, although again, this is my conjecture, this is my opinion, that even for things like SADS, seasonal affective disorder, the solution is not a flickering blue light, which is what SAD lamps are. It's in fact mitochondrial stimulation is what the body needs and what the body misses. They're using blue light to jack you up, and blue light jacks you up just like a stimulant does, just like coffee does.
Very stimulating.
And that feels good for a little bit, right?
Right.
And then you come down and you feel even, in some ways even worse. So
one of the reasons phones and computers can be so addictive and hypnotic is that blue light flickering stimulation response, and eventually it leads to adrenal fatigue. And when you start dumping so much cortisol from these, and I believe that this is one of the contributing factors to the depression of testosterone in men and the increase in estrogenization through chemicalization, because the radical amount of cortisols. I have dozens of friends in their late 20s and early 30s who are internet marketers who spend a great amount of time on the computer, and virtually all of them are on testosterone replacement therapy when they should be at a very high level. And I found that fascinating, and that's another anecdotal thing. But to circle around in regards to infectious diseases, of course, goes back to Dr. Rollier's work when he was dealing with tuberculosis and things like that. He would take people out and expose the bare skin to the sun and start picking up these different, and he had it all gauged of how much at each level of altitude, depending on where the person's sick. It's a great read. You can look it up, Dr. Rollier, and I forget what the name of the book, but it's fascinating that this
I would add something else to that too. In before electricity and before light therapy, the early light therapy of like 1910, and they used to put stained glass in the window and sit lupus patients in front of the glass, so the red glass filters out the blue and ultraviolet, but lets in near-infrared red, and they would, honest to God, heal lupus vulgaris, which people would die of back in the day, completely just with light.
We had a church that I used to go to when I was a kid, and had this ginormous stained glass windows. They were massive stained glass windows, and the light would filter into it. And there is a unique place, if you go to the great cathedrals in Europe, and that light pouring into this stained glass with all the colors, there is a distinctive effect on the body. Like, you might not know what it is, but you're like, okay, there's things going on here. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing what is new, what is old, but you have created a way to kind of hack, if you will, or optimize light therapy in an increasingly electrically complex world.
Yeah, whoa. And I did want to add a little bit more to that, because it's not just about serotonin and dopamine. There's really strong studies out there now in improving your mood and your happiness using light therapy. There's these studies there's this thing called like the HAM anxiety index. And basically they just dose people with near-infrared light and see if they feel better. And they have various psychiatric standards to address this. There's like this anxiety standard, there's this other one. These are all quality of life measurements. But across the board, you see that people have reduced anxiety, increased confidence, reduced depression, more positivity across the board with light therapy. And we need that more than ever. And so I just say, well, heck, if you're going to do sauna, you're going to do light therapy, do them together.
Well, let's talk about this, because we're going to wind things up here in a second, but talk about SaunaSpace. I know we're going to a little special offer. We're going to add people, if you want to go and check out SaunaSpace at bioptimizers.com/SaunaSpace, you'll get 10% off. But can you share with our listeners the type of offerings that you have in the SaunaSpace and what you're doing, and maybe new projects that you're coming up with? Because I have to, what I love about your project and your business is, I've actually taken one of the light panels out of the SaunaSpace, because it comes on those kind of rods or whatever. And I took one
Yeah,
out and I put it in the living room, and I turn it on in the evening for evening light. and people come in and it's got a cool kind of red lounge, and it's nice and it's soft and it's relaxing, and it gets a lot of attention. I'm like, yeah, because it comes from my sauna. But are you looking to get into the lighting industry even maybe as a potential thing? Because I've got a major issue with all of the lighting I'm dealing with everywhere I go. It's like, we need new lighting. This sucks. But tell us all the offerings at SaunaSpace and what you guys are up to, and where people can find out more about you and your company.
Yeah, number one, SaunaSpace is about sauna. Has the most impact on your health. We have a lot of different offerings. We basically offer our tungsten panel, which is the heart of the sauna. That's what you're referring to, the 4-light system. That's the base. We offer that on its own for folks who have a far infrared sauna, they want to upgrade, or have a closet or a small space, and they just don't have the space for the full our SaunaSpace enclosure. And so you can start out with that. And then you can build up to our standard sauna, our base sauna, which is our Illuminati sauna that features the integrated grounding mat, which is really cool, and is like totally ready to upgrade with the EMF shield to the Faraday. Basically, having the electromagnetic liner turns the Illuminati into a Faraday. But even the Illuminati has the grounding mat, which provides you really substantial, almost 100% protection from all the wired voltage. So the Illuminati totally protects you from wired EMFs. Don't worry about that. But if you want to block out the cell phone signal and all the wireless EMFs, you can upgrade to the Faraday. Since the Faraday fabric is really hard to make and it has so much silver in it, it is expensive. And so we designed it so that you could, start humbly and start slow. And then once our technology, what we do at SaunaSpace proves itself to you, you can upgrade to having that Faraday cage. There really is nothing like it. And, if you go into the Faraday sauna with the lights off, you'll experience what it means to be without EMF on the body, without voltage on the body. And then you turn the lights on, it's even more. But for those of you out there like, well, the sauna, it's 20 minutes. I got to shower afterward. It takes up some space in my home. What can I do right now? What can I do to have some kind of benefit? We came out with, at some point, this thing I keep showing that keeps popping in and out, this photon. So this is one light. This is traditionally used for 100 years for targeted light therapy, for spot therapy benefit. They've been using these on racehorses for 40, 50 years to heal wounds. And that's a big aspect of light therapy, is wound healing and anti-aging and stuff. So it's been around for a long time, but it turns out it's good for humans too, not just animals. We actually are animals, let's not forget that. And so we offer this out. It's super affordable. It's super small, and it's a much, it's just for the skeptics out there or the passive users out there, it's a great way to start. So first, you can use it with targeted therapy, but you can do what you want, Wade. You put this next to your computer and it cancels out the blue light and the flickering light effect, and it just makes the indoor lighting enjoyable. And then, the same reason you put it in your living room, we're calling it, it's kind of a cheesy phrase, but we're calling it optimizing your indoor environmental light environment. Your indoor and light environment is very artificial, but you bring this in instead of going out into nature. We'll just bring that fireplace into our office, into our living room. And then after dark, we don't want any more blue light, right? And if we live in a rental space where we have built-in permanent LED lighting, there's no taking that out. But I want to be able to sit with my family and my friends after dark. So you use this. It's the perfect night light. There's no blue light, no flickering light. It's enough light to groove and chill and hang with. And so it's kind of optimal nocturnal lighting, as it were. And like you say, you can just plug it in. You don't have to have a fireplace and start a fire and, have a bonfire in the middle of your house. That's not practical. So this is a new thing that people are using both for the spot therapy, but also increasingly in a passive sense to make all the time that they're indoors suck less and be more enjoyable.
And it works.
And it absolutely works. So we got that going on. That's our general product line. And so I urge you definitely to start out with a photon and just to try it out. Everything we do here comes with a 100-day trial. It's free shipping in the USA. So frankly, if you don't like it, I don't want you to have it. But if you do like it, and you decide over a lengthy trial period, you do love it, then that's what matters. And so we gave you a long time to try it out. But as far as like particular technologies that we have coming out, we have some cool stuff coming out.
Tell us more.
So we came out with our own thermalite bulb. It's a hand blown artisan made bulb where I've redesigned the filament inside way to emit about 2 to 4 times the irradiance in near infrared and red as a standard heat lamp. So this is not grandpa's heat lamp. This is the thermalite, and it's just more big and bad. So and people feel it because we for 5 years used the standard heat lamps, and then a lot of people have been upgrading since then, and you can feel it. It's more light therapy, so it's more intense and energizing, but not in a stressy way, in a energizing, awesome way. So I've had that. We've had great success with that so far, but we also have some really cool stuff. We have 4 new sauna colors now, so including the natural. So we have 5 options now, and that's a little more fun, a little more,
sure.
But what you have is, it's not just organically dyed. We actually tried to commercialize Ayurvedic dyeing of fabrics. This is Ayurvedic medicine as it applies to medicinal dyeing of fabrics for health benefits. So turmeric is anti-inflammatory. And so we went to India and we found a way to develop this. So the organic process, they're literally taking the yarn and dipping into barrels of turmeric water and then laying the yarn out on like tree limbs and then weaving it up into a fabric and making this turmeric dyed fabric, which is really cool to be surrounded by that inside the sauna.
Yeah, super far out, super great.
So yeah, we got that, and we just continue to product develop obsessively our EMF mitigation fabrics and technologies. And we also have this other cool thing that if you haven't seen the old one, you wouldn't notice, but this is the new guard. The light guard I've developed like 4 or 5. This is the 5th version of it. It just came out, and it's a very important safety upgrade. The entire thing is a stainless steel mesh cage now. So if that bulb breaks in there, it stays inside. And it's also it's child lock. So to get it out, you have to twist and pull at the same time with 2 hands. So children can't get in here, where the old one, you can get your fingers in the back. And also, if you don't have awareness or if you have brain fog, not necessarily children, you don't want to inadvertently touch anything. And so it's just a super badass new design that it took 2 years to develop. And we've been developing under the coronavirus stuff. It finally released yesterday. It was really frustrating. There's a lot of material delays. And so those of you out there who get frustrated when your order doesn't arrive on time, for last year's holiday, it's because all supply chains across the world were screwed up and disrupted. And we're very thankful we made it through in terms of dealing with a lot of serious shortages, left and right. But we got this that came out. It's a huge safety improvement. It's super awesome. And that's just kind of a taste of what we do here. We'll do a lot more here this year. I'm not going to disclose anything, but we do have some cool stuff that's brand new that will come out in 2021.
Awesome. So great. Brian Richards from SaunaSpace. For those who want to go give a shot to some of his devices, I highly recommend it. I use it every single week. I wouldn't say every day, but almost every day that I'm in using. Actually, I use the light every day because we turn it on in the living room every single night. It's a great ambient light. I love it. It's super awesome and feels amazing. Bioptimizers.com/SaunaSpace. Brian, thank you for joining us today, taking time. I know you're running a factory and all these things, supply chains of building stuff, and your business is growing, and it's very exciting. I want to thank you for joining us today. And for all our listeners on the Awesome Health Show at Bioptimizers, of course, we really appreciate that you took the time to listen today. I hope you learned some really cool things. And you know what? Give this a shot. Sauna technology is one of the best ways I know to mitigate the damaging effects of technological innovation. And Brian and his company, SaunaSpace, is leading the way with real-world solutions that not only work, but make you feel great. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. See ya!
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. what I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based. And you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.